Whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or Alcatraz, it's all off the subject of what they're doing with this budget that is harmful to the kitchen table, meeting the kitchen table needs of the American people.
Is the Jeffrey Epstein situation really a distraction? This might be one of the rare times you find Nancy Pelosi and President Trump in agreement about something, but let's be fair, the Epstein saga is not going away anytime soon. Let's talk about that and more with Kaivan Shroff, a lawyer and Democratic strategist, up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Welcome back, Kaivan. Good to see you again.
Always great to join.
When you hear that sound from Nancy Pelosi, I'm kind of shocked that she would say something like that, being that she was always first to criticize President Trump during his first term about just about anything.
I agree. You know, look, it is off message, and I've been on your show before defending sort of the divide between the older cohort and the younger energy in our party, but this really does seem like it's out of touch from Pelosi. This is a major issue. As you just said, it is absolutely not going away, and the fact that they can't take this issue and turn it into, I mean, I was on the Clinton campaign, and I think back to how they made Benghazi a years-long scandal. If Democrats can't take all the fodder here with Epstein, by the way, also with Musk, with so many things, and stretch it out as a negative story for Trump. And by the way, one that clearly riles him up and gets under his skin and divides his base, I think it's a huge miss. And really, I think her saying that touches on something that's been a conversation in our party about fighters versus folders, something that was a conversation in our New York City mayor's race here, and it really does seem a little bit weak. People want the outcome here on both sides of the aisle, actually, so it's a great opportunity.
We're going to get to that New York City mayor's race in a moment, but I'm curious, when it comes to messaging with the Democratic Party right now, I mean, you had former President Biden last week give an interview where he started talking about the auto pen situation, which has been a big source of interest for Republicans as they try to find something to pivot to get the media to stop covering the Epstein scandal. Who's running messaging here for this party?
I agree with you. You know, I do think that we see Republicans in lockstep on messaging such that they can get a pretty boring story like this auto pen story when, by the way, Donald Trump has used the auto pen. Comer, who's leading the investigation into this auto pen use, is sending digital signatures even in his investigation. So it's a non-story that they can make a story, whereas here you have a huge scandal. And by the way, not only is it not a distraction, it's a major wedge issue, this Epstein topic, because it's one of many, right? You have his base divided on Epstein. They're fighting over it. Should they just move on? Should they actually get the answers they were promised? But then at the same time, you have Trump reneging on his promises in foreign affairs, right? He's actually involving the U.S. in more foreign conflicts. Then you had him add $4 trillion to the budget. And then I give a half-point wedge issue to this issue of immigration, where he's even losing folks like Joe Rogan. So there's a lot of tension among his base that has, up to this point, been pretty strongly aligned. And so I think every opportunity to divide them should be taken and not looked over. And I think there's also a lot of story to tell here to educate young voters about things they may not know. You know, I think your average Gen Zer doesn't know that until 2007, Republicans had a pedophile, Dennis Sturt, as Speaker of the House. Why is it that Jim Jordan is chairing the Judiciary Committee trying to once again cover up a pedophilia scandal? He's done it before, as we know, in Ohio. Matt Gaetz tied up with a Venmo scandal, again connected to pedophilia. Roy Moore, who they ran for Senate, accused of being a pedophile. And it's a pattern that we've seen, and it's a strong case to make. And it doesn't even come close, I would say. You know, I've been asked by a lot of reporters, are Democrats leaning into conspiracy theory? This is not a conspiracy theory. We are relying on the open and admitted facts of the Trump administration, of various Trump officials, and we're just saying, were you lying then or were you lying now, and explaining this to the American people.
All right, so you are in New York, and as we enter our last minute of the segment here, I wanted to pivot real quick to the New York City mayoral race, because Zeron Mandani, who is the Democratic nominee, was here in D.C. trying to curry favor with many Democrats, because it doesn't seem as though there necessarily is, there's a lot of reticence to embrace him, it seems, among the Democratic base. The AOCs of the world obviously on board with him as a Democratic Socialist, which is Mandani says he is. Cuomo's running as an independent. You know, what does this say about the future of the party? And are Democrats going to get on board with one candidate?
Look, I think he has every headwind in his favor to become the mayor of New York City. I think that this demand that somehow the Democratic Party fall in lockstep with the Democratic Socialist agenda is absurd. I know a lot of people are sort of spitting back that vote blue no matter who quote that we've heard time and time again. But I don't think any mainstream Democrats feel like the left actually held up their end of that bargain. I don't think we saw that, certainly not in 2016. We had to come up with the slogan because of the faction and the Bernie left that was being so incredibly divisive that I don't feel like people feel like, the left showed up for Kamala Harris in 2024. I don't think anyone is compelled by that argument. I think what he needs to do is explain how he's actually going to get done the things that he's proposed. Otherwise, it's all just hype and marketing, and we've been there before, and it doesn't work out well for voters, and it certainly doesn't work out well for the politicians that make, lofty promises and don't deliver on them. But I do think, he seems open to walking back his position on the phrase globalize the intifada, saying that he will now discourage its use. I think that's important to a lot of voters. So we'll see where he goes, because he's also trapped, I think, by the sort of purity politics left that is very unforgiving of even their own candidates when they compromise, when they take the actions that are necessary to deliver any type of outcome.
Kaivan Shroff on the Final Five. Good to see you again.
Great to join.
Final Five is back after this.